Namaste. Welcome to this session on Vairagya. We have been discussing Vairagya in last couple of sessions. We have gone through the Vairagyas called Yatamana, Vyatireka, Ekendriya, and then we just spoke about Vachikara Vairagya, the four types of Vairagya. So Patanjali classes them as lower Vairagya. And of course, we have not reached the final stage of lower Vairagya in our discussions, which is Vashikara Sagnya Vairagyam. So now actually we are coming to very textual purport. So far whatever we were considering was a kind of run-up to the idea of Vairagya, the notion of Vairagya, the concept of Vairagya. And for our convenience and because of the popular usage of the word for Vairagya, we were referring to it as dispassion. Now at this juncture, let me tell you that what is being discussed and what was really being discussed was not really dispassion. That's an English word. We are now going to deal with Vairagya. Vairagya, Vigata Raga. And it is Vitrushna, Vigata Trushna. Now, so since we are going to embark upon the subject quite pedantically, so at the outset, let me tell you that we have not been discussing dispassion, and we are not here to discuss dispassion. Vairagya is not dispassion. Vairagya is Vairagya. And Vairagya as defined is Vitrushna. Vitrushna means Vigata Trushna. Trushna means thirst. And it is not even thirstlessness. Going across, going past thirst is Vigata Trushna, Vitrushna. That means the thirst has to be there and that thirst has to be overcome. Not having the thirst is not being discussed. There's a big difference between not having thirst and going past thirst. Not having thirst and overcoming thirst or getting past thirst. There is a big difference. We have no thirst for so many things. As we can put a long list where we all have a thirst, we can also put a list where we don't have thirst. So not having thirst is thirstlessness. And that is not being discussed so far. What is being discussed is going past any thirst, overcoming the thirst. So understand the difference between not having the thirst and overcoming the thirst. Overcoming the thirst implies that there was thirst. There is thirst. There has been thirst. And that has to be overcome. So Vairagya is overcoming the thirst and not thirstlessness, which is again an English word. So that also will be misleading to understand what we are really discussing here. Then as I said about dispassion, it is also not dispassion that we have been discussing, although we have referred to as dispassion for our convenience. Now let's try to embark upon more formally and technically on these terms, or the term which is Vairagya. And Vairagya is Vairagya, definitely not dispassion. See, suppose you are working in some realm or particular act, particular endeavor, you are working very passionately, it is quite obvious and evident that you are working passionately. And working passionately is not a defect in social values and in mundane life. Whatever we are doing, we should be doing passionately, ideally. Why is it that it is to be done with dispassion? So, it is not at all so far suggested that we should not work passionately and we should have no passion. Because no passion also means the springs of life removed. Now, if the springs of life are removed, that won't be positive life and it will be miserable life. So, whatever we were discussing so far was temperance and moderation and not dispassion. So, we must overcome this usage of the word with reference to yoga. When we discuss Patanjali Yoga Sutra and yoga and adhyatma, the dispassion word should be done away with. We need to investigate what does it really mean, dispassion. And it's not a good thing to be dispassionate in life through and through. Then it's a melancholy in life. And that is not at all being suggested. So, I want you to think over this, the word dispassion. And then you will realize that if you are doing yoga, should you not do it passionately? If you are having an endeavor in yoga, should it not be a passionate endeavor in yoga? Or should it be passionless? Okay. So whenever you are doing something with passion, that is appreciated, that is applauded, and that should be applauded, and that really scores a merit. And there are so many endeavors where we do not have any passion. Then understand what is the grade of that work if you are not working with any passion. There are so many things we do in life which we are forced to do. We are in the gravity of to be doing it, and therefore we do it. So that might be unpassion, or whatever you might like to call it. So there are so many activities that we carry out where we don't have passion, in the sense we don't have motivation, in the sense we don't have spiritedness, in the sense we don't have enthusiasm, in the sense we do not have intent. So, understand how the word dispassion that we are used to using it is not proper. Then what is really suggested, particularly with reference to what we are speaking about Vairagya, is that the attachment or the passion, when it goes out of proportions, then something like obsession comes in. We do so many things then obsessionally. And then our passion to do something should not enter the domain of obsession. That won't be good. So doing something passionately is definitely good and it scores merit. But suppose that passion goes out of proportion. If it is superfluous kind of passion to do it, is exuberance of passion to do it, then it really doesn't score merit. What we call as going overboard. Now that is not a good thing. So to do passionately is a good thing, but the passion has a kind of meter. And if we cross that barrier, then that is not good. So even if you are doing yoga with fervor, and then the fervor goes on increasing, and swells and swells and swells and swells, then that will be a swollen condition. The swelling will not be good. So our passion should not get swelled. So what was so far discussed and what was really suggested is that it's not that we should have dispassion. We were supposed to go for temperance and moderation. So discrete amount of passionateness. There must be mathematics in passionateness. As far as the worldly activities are concerned, our worldly life is concerned. That means we have to exercise somewhere the control and restraint with regards to what we are dealing with here. Vairagya has to do something with our tendencies. And to let loose the tendencies is not a good condition. In any case. So, when we have this kind of little control, there is a regulator to our passion dynamics, where we can turn it on, turn it off, or have a progression like volume knob in a sound machine. We can increase the volume. Now, how much to increase the volume? There must be discretion. We don't every time turn it full on. We don't have to turn it full on every time. So it's a knob, and then we keep it at a suitable level. So as in case of sound, we want to go for suitable level. Technically speaking, decibel level. And we want to opt for that decibel level, which is not jarring the ears, which is not tormenting the ears and mind, and we get a good sound effect as well. The quality of sonorousness, it depends upon handling that volume, knob of volume, sound volume. Similarly, Vairagya needs a knob here. And that is called Yatamana Sagnya Vairagya, that is moderation. Knob of moderation, knob of temperance. There must be this device. Like a sound machine has a knob for volume, there must be this kind of knob. So we know when to turn out the passion on higher range, when to lower it, when to higher it. So there is some mathematics. So the first important point is that we are speaking on moderation. We are not speaking on renunciation, which is usually popular notion of Vairagya. Vairagya is to give up this, give up that, give up as many things as possible, give up everything, finally, ultimately. So what is being discussed is not giving up. It is only turn down that knob to suitable level. Vitrushna, Vigata Trushna. That means if you have thirst for a particular object, that thirst, if it is uncontrolled, then it would not be proper, it would be devastating. Now, as I said, usually the Vairagya is always with reference to our tendencies, our vasanas. So we must be very careful in handling the vasanas. As we have repeatedly said, we should not be whiplashing it, we should not be suppressing it, we should not be bulldozing it. Because if you recall, last time I told you, life can be ended with a death. But the vairagya, or the thirst, or the tendency will not be ended with end of life. Death will only end the life. Death will not end the tendencies. So we should know what these tendencies are. So nowhere Vairagya is suggesting renunciate nature, ascetic nature, or suggesting one to be a mendicant. We have to be worldly people. We are in the world. We are people of the world. We are people for the world. And the world is for us. And therefore nowhere it is being suggested to be a mendicant. That is not advice for everyone. There are isolated few people who can be going for mendicancy, ascetic life. But generally it is not, and yoga is not certainly advising that, understand. In Patanjali's yoga or in yoga, in Adhyatma, you are not at all told to do that. That you must be an ascetic of high order, mendicant, giving up all kinds of consumptions and enjoyments and joys and delights and pleasures. Now, if that is the condition, the life will be miserable. So, nowhere it is said that you must do away with your delights, avoid all delights, or avoid all pleasures, avoid all pleasure consumptions, avoid all gratification. That is not being suggested. The Vairagya world really has that idea, that notion, Vigata Raga. That means we have to turn down that volume of attachment, obsession, passion, our likes. If you like something excessively, and if you are not having any control over your likes and its gravities of the likes, it will be devastating. We must have some gravity over the control over the gravities of likes. If you let loose it totally, that will spoil our life. That will not only spoil our life, that will spoil our order in life, personal life, order in family life, order in social life, order in life at large, human life. So that's why I've been repeatedly telling you, it is temperance. It is discretion which is being suggested, and not to thwart the consumptions and delights. To be happy is tendency of the life, and it is perfectly right to be happy. And you can't be happy without consuming happiness. I cannot take you to a cake shop or a shop of street meats and just make you sight from the showcases there and telling you this is all not to eat. It's nothing. It is not like that. So, what is being suggested in Vairagya is discretion, understand this, and not total sanction on pleasure consumptions, pleasure intercourse, pleasure interactions. Then, that is one principle of Vairagya which we must be practicing. What will it do? This is good for everyone. To be a good human being, to be having a healthy life, this practice is important. So it will give us a good sense of well-being in our life, physical life, mental life, emotional life, sentimental life. So Vairagya will only give that, that's all. It will, in this kind of idea of Vairagya, that we are just trying to be temperate and try to be moderate. So nowhere there is sanction in temperance and moderation. But of course, if we have some bad habits, indecent habits, then we need to control that. That is not really Vairagya, actually. If you have certain, frolicking nature, frolicsome nature, then it's a different control. If you are very, very sensual, to overcome sensuality, what we take up is not necessarily vairagya. It's a measure against our indiscreetness, exuberance in passion, exuberance in sensuality, exuberance in gratifications. So that is totally a different thing, not to mix up that with this. Then the other principle that we understood was that we are not being told to practice dispassion as a countering force to passion. We should not be countering passion with dispassion. In the last session, we came to this, and I told you that Adhyatma doesn't tell us to thwart the passion, bulldoze the passion, stampede the passion, devastate the passion. It says higher passion. The passion should be countered with superior passion, higher passion, in higher realm, higher culture, higher quality. So again, we are actually advised to practice passion, but the passion for something which is higher. If our passion is on lower level, we need to take recourse to passion on higher level. So passion on higher level qualitatively and grade wise will definitely discourage the passion on lower levels. So the dispassion is not, if it is suggested to be practicing dispassion, as all of us have this kind of brainwash that this is dispassion, what is being suggested, what is being discussed is dispassion, then understand here, we are asked to have passion to counter passion, higher passion to counter lower passion. Higher passion in the sense of culture, quality, grade, level. So that should be taken recourse to. We have to take recourse to passion as students of yoga. Passion to what? Passion to something which is sublime, more sublime than what we have in our tendency plan. So we need to become more nobler. We need to embrace noble conditions, noble objects, noble situations, noble people, noble associations, noble companies. So that will really counter the passion which is havoc played by tendencies. So it is passion for passion. Measure is passion for passion and not dispassion for against passion. It is not dispassion against passion, it is passion for passion. That is what we commoners, even those who are not in the realm of spirituality, practicing Adi Yoga, Adhyatma, spirituality, very practical minded people, worldly people, mundane people, they should take recourse to this for them to evolve. Otherwise, they will not evolve. Given to tendencies, we will devolve. So it doesn't mean that we have to wage a battle with tendencies and vanquish them, kill them, as if they are our foes and enemies and aliens. As we wage a battle with our alien force. We are not, vasanas are no doubt alien force. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, Kama. Kama is what we are referring to, which has to be taken to temperance and moderation. So we must have higher goals in life. Set higher goals in life, lower goals will fade away. That's the principle param drushtva nivartante, Bhagavad Gita, which I referred to last time. So, then what will it fetch us? It will fetch us good wisdom, good knowledge, sensibility. We will be a more sensible person. It will also give us health, well-being, wellness, rather than the devastation that takes place for a life which is indiscreetly going after tendencies or pampering tendencies, encouraging tendencies, opening out the field for tendencies to play havoc. Life will be in disarray, life will be miserable ultimately. So that is all it is going to give. Yatamana Sagnya Vairagya, Vyatireka Sagnya Vairagya. And then we refer to Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya. What is this Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya? See, for a person in the spiritual realm, where we see that his measures against the raga, the thirst, are very strong compared to yours and ours. And then what happens? He attains so much amount of reformation and moderation and temperance that tendencies now don't play havoc. They don't really manifest on motor system. They don't really manifest in activity of life. They don't really manifest in activity of body and mind and senses. Because of the reformation, significant reformation, substantial reformation, they don't play havoc. They don't really find encouragement to come on surface and interfere with your life dynamics, life processes. So that is almost a sagely kind of caliber of a human being, that the tendencies are not getting that encouragement to really manifest and then interfere in the dynamics of life, in dynamics of our activities, physical activity, mental activity, or emotional activity, or whatever, sentimental activity, whatever. So much amount of control is attained that one is assured that the tendencies will not really play havoc in my life. Now understand, that's quite a supreme level of vairagya for us. If the raga, the thirst or trishna is not going to manifest. However, it is there in the infra atomic structure of the mind. It is somewhere in the deep organ of the mind that still there is a bubble. But that bubble doesn't have potency or potentials enough to really interfere with our life dynamics. Like we say, bad things come to mind. For us, it will never happen that no bad thing will ever come to our mind. It will come. But then if we are having some viveka and discrimination and discretion, we will not allow that bad thought to interfere with our life and then spoil our dynamics of life. That much of control would be there, although bad thoughts come to mind. None of us can ever claim that no bad thought ever comes to my mind. This will be utopian. This would be meaningless claim, baseless claim. It will not be really entertained. So bad things do come to us, but they don't interfere with our activities of life, in our personal activity, our family activity, social activity, greater social activity, up to the entire range available, what is called as global activity. Because our activities don't go beyond global dimensions, global radius. At the most, our activities are having global radius and not even a below millimeter more than that. Anyway, so, but yet within the mind there is some kind of vibration which now and then uh, pulsates. It now and then pulsates. Now, in that case, that is called Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya, and this is the supreme Vairagya that we can attain. We mortals can attain this level, and that would be supreme level of our attainment. We can't really go beyond it. As a worldly man, as a mundane man, as a man of worldly activity, who is in the world, who is of the world, who is for the world, etc. So that is called Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya, means in Eka Indriya, in one organ, in a very deep plane of our senses, or deep plane of our mind, that mind has still that touch of thirst. But that cannot be called as lust, because it will not manifest. It bubbles in the mind. Although we might be reformed in our pleasure consumptions, and that is 24/7, that we are sure about it. But yet sometimes this vibration is there in our very deep psyche, and that is called Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya. Now those in a spiritual path who are going for the culminative phase of spiritual samam bonam, they have to consider this Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya. They will have to manage this. And this is managed only by progressive satsanga, no compromise in satsanga, maximum satsanga, satvik ahar vihar achar vichar, then no compromise in sadhana sangha and shastra sangha. Because now and then it happens that sometimes we are casual, sometimes we overlook, sometimes we neglect. Although we might be carrying out a pursuit very, very sincerely, sometimes there is slackening. Now this slackening is the one which is causing this ekendriya, one organ within us, to vibrate with what tendency it is containing. And then there is a sudden vibration in the mind, of which we are having a sense of shame and sense of abashment. Oh, why did this thought come to my mind? So that needs to be tackled by a yogi, not who are practicing yoga, but a yogi. Because yogi is trying to go for samadhi bhava, samadhi bhavana, actualizations of samadhi. And therefore he has to bother about this Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya, for which the life of yogi must be really a life of an ascetic. For you and me, asceticism is not really suggested, but there is a level in yoga where you will have to be, and you will be heading towards, and you will be getting it, you will be embracing it quite voluntarily, and it will be out of happening that you will be an ascetic. You are not coercively ascetic, you are not ascetic by volition, will, determination, resoluteness, etc. That's no asceticism. That is no asceticism at all if it is by resolution. It has to be spontaneous and organic. A yogi reaches that level, and then this Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya needs to be managed. You and me will not be thinking of managing it, nor we have qualification, nor we have credentials, nor we have empowerment. That is why for you and me, bad thoughts, illicit thoughts, evil thoughts will come to our mind. But if we are sufficiently reformed, we will not allow it to take over our motor system of body and motor system of mind. So that much we are reformed, that we do not allow it to interfere with our dynamics of life, of physical activity, mental activity, emotional activity, intellectual activity, sentimental activity, memory activity, imagination activity, whatever. So that is Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya. And that is beyond horizon for you and me. But we should know that there is a level. And that is perhaps for us the supreme level, because it's quite a supremacy of control that you are not allowing those bad tendencies to really play havoc or not even come to surface. If that much control is had, that we don't allow those tendencies to interfere with our life and dabble with our life dynamics, that means that's a supremacy of control. So for us it is supremacy of control when Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya is merely thought about, or we try to conceive it as to what it is for our understanding, for our comprehension. So that is the third level of Vairagya, which is on lower plane. And as I have been telling you, there are 4 levels. Now the next one is Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya. This is really appeared in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra textually. There is a very, very formal mention of Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya, which means all the earlier stages are included, have been considered. And that is why we really considered, although Patanjali has not defined Yatamana Sagnya Vairagya, Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya, Ekendriya Sagnya Vairagya, but his definition is so pervasive that its radius is including all that we have discussed so far. So now we come to Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya. This is merely for our understanding, this is merely for us to have idea of what Patanjali is speaking about, and it is not really for us to look for inculcation. Whatever was to be inculcated, what is to be inculcated has been already mentioned. Temperance and temperance and temperance and temperance, more temperance and more temperance and more temperance. Moderation and more moderation and more moderation and more moderation, to the extent that we can put up in our very conduct of life. Nowhere we are suggested to go for ascetic life of a mendicant. So nowhere sannyasa is coming in Vairagya here. This should be understood. Otherwise, a common man's understanding is that Vairagya means sannyas. Vairagya means it heads towards sannyas. It is not heading towards the sannyas. Even Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya is not really heading towards sannyas. Because yogi can be a family man. The sages, rishis, the rishis were having the qualification for samadhi, however, they were having family life. We know about Rishi Patni. The Rishi Munis, they were all having wife and family. Nowhere that sannyas. Sannyas is, of course, one of the ashramas, sannyas ashram. So that's a different thing. And it is not, there is no reference to sannyas ashram here. Even in Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya. Even in the highest Vairagya, in the lower grade of Vairagya. So now we are embarking upon the highest of the lower Vairagya. The highest of the lower Vairagya called Vashikara. Vashikara means to have supremacy of control. So it is supremacy of consciousness in thirstlessness. So far we are only dealing with moderation and more moderation, temperance and more temperance, etc. Nowhere came the supremacy of consciousness. Now, this is only required if you are to be qualifying for samadhi. Otherwise, it is not needed. So, if you are going to develop means for samadhi, then this is the means. Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya is means. But suppose samadhi is not an end for you, then you don't have to have Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya. And if you still have this dream idea of getting samadhi sometimes at least, a glimpse of samadhi, then you should know that you are not really adhered to the means of it, which is Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya, which is described in this sutra. So, Vashikara means supremacy of consciousness. Here in Vairagya we mean control, regulatory control. So there should be supremacy of control for the Vairagya which is being now mentioned. Now Vashikara where? Supremacy of consciousness where? Drushtanushravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya. Again Vitrushna, Vigata Trushna. So, it is not thirstlessness, but then it is turning down it more and more and more and more. So, and then going past the thirst. This is needed for a yogi who is samadhi qualified and samadhi empowered. If somebody is empowered for samadhi, who is a yogi? Who is qualified for samadhi? Who is a yogi? For them, they need this thirstlessness. But where? Drushtanushravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya Vashikara Sagnya Vairagyam. Drushta Vishayas and Shruta Vishayas, Anushravika Vishayas, Anushruta Vishayas. Drushta Vishayas means the objects which we have seen, objects of pleasure, objects of delight, where we naturally have thirst. You can't say that these are all objects of delight, but I don't have thirst. In that case, they are not objects of delight. So wherever it's an object of delight, there is always a thirst. And then where do you have thirst? Particularly for a yogi, because you and me do not know what are the delights of heavens. We can only have idea. But yogi who is going to experience celestial delights, more immortal delights, and a higher degree of delights which are in celestial objects. So not having thirst for those, whether experienced or not experienced. There are certain delights which we have not experienced, and now in that sense we can't say we don't have thirst. We have not experienced. You see, you will never call a infant child as thirstless. Does the child have dispassion? No. Because the child sooner or later will come to age and will get passion, and then overcoming the passion is mentioned in Vairagya. Not having passion is not mentioned in Vairagya. So we don't have passion in so many things about which we have not heard, we had not even an idea, we did not even imagine. But suppose it strikes to your imagination some kind of celestial pleasure or exuberance of pleasure, where is the chance to say that you will not have thirst? So known, unknown, seen, unseen, yet to seen. There are so many objects in this world. We have not seen the objects of 25th century. So we can't say we don't have thirst for objects of 25th century. We have no idea about it. The happiness and delight that you are getting today was not available 400 years back, 300 years back, 200 years back, 100 years back. So the people of those generations did not have idea of these delights. But the yogi is going to go to various planes within oneself. Various celestial planes. Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satya. So he is going to have an excursion to various planes in Samadhi. And not to have thirst is so important. And therefore, Drushtaru Shravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya Vashikara Sagnya Vairagyam. This is only required for Samadhi. This will only come if the Samadhi is going to come. This is not going to come if the Samadhi is not going to come. Samadhi is not needed to be coming. Samadhi is not wanted to be coming. Samadhi is not qualified to be coming, not empowered. One is not empowered to be getting it. Then this Vashikara Sagnya Vairagyam will not be in the reckoning. So this is the means for Samprajnata Samadhi. So that is what this Vairagya is being mentioned, which is the highest of the lower Vairagya. And then Patanjali is going to mention another Vairagya which is going to be higher Vairagya. Truly higher Vairagya, not relatively. It is absolutely truly that it is absolutely higher Vairagya called Paravairagya. But before we go to Paravairagya, we will have to understand this Vashikara Sagnya Vairagya, which is Drushtanushravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya Vashikara Sagnya Vairagyam. This is only needed for one who is qualified to get Samadhi, one who is empowered to get Samadhi, and not just wanting to get Samadhi. Otherwise, we can be all in dreamy world. I want to have sometimes glimpse of Samadhi, etc., etc. This is very childish. This is very childish thought. Because we are not really adhered to the means which we are now going to know theoretically. And this is only for your and my information. We will not be able to have any measures taken to attain this Vairagya, because we have to go a long way in Yatamana Sagnya Vairagya, Vyatireka Sagnya Vairagya. And I told you about Vyatireka, it is not a kind of Vairagya. You should recall that. It is only a facility for us to monitor our desire potencies, magnitude of our potencies. So that is only given in Vyatireka Sagnya Vairagya, that you can admeasure how much is the thirst gone, how much the thirst yet to go, whether the thirst is gone up to expectation, desired level. So it will show all those meters. Vyatireka Sagnya Vairagya only gives you meters to have the readings, how far you have gone in Vairagya, how far you should have gone in Vairagya, how far you are expected to go in Vairagya. So meters will be given to you, which is a great facility. Like a dashboard of a car, if you don't have any indicators there, meters there, or the cockpit of a airplane, so many meters are there. Understand the plight of a flight officer without all these meters working. It is impossible to fly an aircraft with all the meters not working, or any of the meters not working. Meters are required. He should be looking at the meters, reading, taking the readings every time. So Vyatireka is something like that. Then Ekendriya Sagna Vairagya is again not a kind of Vairagya itself. It tells you the level of Vairagya one should be reaching to qualify for Vashikara Sagna Vairagya. If Ekendriya Sagna Vairagya is not there, Vashikara Sagna Vairagya is not in remotest possibility. So these are a few things which come as enunciation to textual sutra on Vairagya. So with that, we will end the session today. Namaskar all of you.